They're two happy women bringing you inspiring stories, politics, pop culture, and lifestyle hacks, all with an eye to making our communities and our country a better place to live. It's the Happy Women Podcast with your hosts, Jen Horn and Katie Gorka.
Democrats celebrate George Floyd. Republicans celebrating those who served and made the ultimate sacrifice. A definite difference in the way our political parties celebrate the Memorial Day weekend. Welcome to the Happy Women Podcast. I'm Jennifer Horn.
And I'm Katie Gorka.
And happy Memorial Day, day after, as we record this together. And it's hard for me to say happy Memorial Day because it's one of those holidays, Katie, that we need to be saying, make it a meaningful Memorial Day, because this is about honoring those who have served, made the ultimate sacrifice, and had their lives taken either in battle or in service to our country. And I will tell you that over the weekend, I was really impressed with the amount of pro-American posts that I saw on social media, but I was also taken with the amount of attention that was being given to George Floyd. And I know that this stuck out to you. It was the anniversary of his death. What were your thoughts on just how our two political parties really looked at this Memorial Day weekend?
So I want to say in general, I've been so moved by the way my community and communities around me honor Memorial Day and honor our fallen heroes. To me, it's one of the holidays that I think we actually do best. And it's always been very moving. And I always get out to one of the celebrations or memorial services. But I was really shocked this year by the fact that the left decided, instead of going all in on Memorial Day, they went all in on George Floyd, because I guess it's the 5-year anniversary. But I mean, if ever there was somebody not to elevate to hero status, it would be him. And it's come out, as more and more information about that day, his death has come out, it's clear that he was really fully culpable on a massive amount of drugs. Yes, he was probably not treated the best way, but the police, if you watch the entire film, the police gave him every opportunity to stand down, and he would not. So the fact that the left makes him their hero on Memorial Day is such a slap in the face to every person who has ever served this country in uniform and all of their family members. I was particularly moved. I thought this year, more than ever before, I saw just such powerful posts from husbands, wives, mothers, children, all sorts of people who had lost a really beloved member of their family, somebody who had fallen in battle. And it just made it all the more insulting that the left has approached this the way they have.
Well, and it all comes down to pro-America or anti-America.
Yes.
And I think that was just really showing itself this weekend. And you and I were talking about this earlier. It seems like this is another problem with our schools, and that we are not doing a good enough job telling people about the reason for the holiday, telling people about how they have the ability to stand up and talk about George Floyd. That freedom comes from the people who died to give it to us. And it's an important time, and it's an important holiday. And I don't know how much of it actually gets talked about or celebrated in the schooling process in this country. It's just another reason that we need civics. It's another reason that we need to make sure we have American history as part of our curriculum, and that we don't get bogged down by all of this woke nonsense.
No, and it's super interesting, actually, that you mentioned that now, because last week there was a flurry of announcements about the Fairfax County public school system, which is holding on to its DEI programs for dear life. They just will not give it up, in spite of the fact that it means they're going to lose $168 million in federal funding. But they've been sued, and there's a case brought against them now, saying that they had discriminated against Asians, and they are continuing to teach all this, that we are fundamentally racist. And it just blows my mind that we can't get back on track, at least not here in Fairfax County.
Well, and the story that actually you even brought this to my attention. I saw it kind of circulating around, but Gavin Newsom getting it from President Trump. He likes to call him Gavin Newscum, which I love, even though it's not very nice, but I like it because he deserves it, that nickname. And speaking of the schools, Gavin Newsom is allowing this kid, this AB Hernandez, who's a biological boy, to compete in a women's track and field competition, CIF, and the championships are coming. And thank God for President Trump. This isn't necessarily curriculum related, but keeping an eye on California schools and seeing that they're allowing this man to compete against women. And Trump is now saying we're taking away the federal funding from California. And look, I live in the state of California. I know we benefit from that federal funding, but at some point, people have to start playing by the rules, and fair is fair. Um, it's time we get back to real curriculum in our schools, real biologically sound athletes in our sports. I mean, we don't need to have this mixing. It just makes no sense. And more than 75% of the population agrees with us, Katie. It is just the far left that continues to advance these narratives.
Yeah, I found this story particularly heartening, seeing Trump stand up to Governor Newsom, especially after what you and I heard from Riley Gaines a couple of weeks
Yeah.
ago at your Unite IE event. I had actually never, in spite of all the times that I've heard Riley Gaines speak, but I'd never heard her tell her whole story from beginning to end. And the whole idea that she trained her whole life only to end up in this major race, and she ties down to the split second. I didn't realize that. Down to the split second with a male swimmer, Leah Thomas, who claimed to be a woman. And the judges said, there is only one trophy, and the trophy has to go to one of you, and it's going to go to the male. And she said, and up to that point, nobody had stood up for her. She just kept thinking, at some point, somebody's going to interject. Somebody's going to step in here and say, wait, this is not right. And she said, nobody did. And that was the moment when she said, I am going to start standing up for myself, advocating for myself and other women and girls. But it's just stunning then to see, here comes President Trump, really being a hero and standing up for the women and girls in this country who are being erased by male athletes competing in women's events.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I'm so glad he's there. And I'm so glad he's standing up to Gavin Newsom. And he was on the right side of it. And he is on the right side of it. And we need, the feminists are not there anymore. The feminists have gone. They won't touch this issue. And who would imagine that President Trump, the one who gets so much criticism, is the one who's actually the one protecting women and female athletes. And before we move on from Trump and this discussion about Memorial Day, where we really all started, and the difference between how these parties are celebrating Memorial Day, I thought both the Vice President, J.D. Vance, and President Trump did incredibly beautiful Memorial Day speeches. And looking at what we saw the last 4 years, it was a stark contrast between how Joe Biden and Kamala Harris celebrated Memorial Day and what we are seeing with this administration. Take a listen. This is Vice President J.D. Vance.
Each life honored here in Arlington was once full of the ordinary moments and quiet dreams, of early sunrises, of good days and bad days, of celebrations and disappointments. They stood not apart from us, but among us, ordinary men and women who chose to shoulder an impossible burden. And when we consider what they gave to us, it's common, of course, to focus on their deaths, on the courage to give in that moment what very few are willing or able to sacrifice. But the real tragedy of the loss is not in a single moment of suffering, as our Gold Star families know well, but in all the future moments they and their families lost. Every moment between their sacrifice on the battlefield and what would have been a natural death. Because we know they sacrificed not just their physical life, they sacrificed the moments that make that life worthwhile. They sacrificed a child's embrace. They sacrificed walking their daughter down the aisle, of seeing their husband or wife after a big promotion, of sharing a meal with the family at Thanksgiving. For my fellow Americans, especially those watching on television, consider the sum of all the moments that make a good life. And now appreciate that countless strangers, people most of you never met, they gave up those moments in their own life so that we could enjoy them in ours. And that is what Memorial Day is all about.
Amazing words, Katie. I mean, for those families who lost everything and talking about those brave warriors, no matter how old they are, incredible fortitude, incredible strength, bravery, and courage. And I'm so happy to hear our vice president talking about the suffering of the families, but also the legacy of those fallen soldiers.
Completely agree. And also the bigger picture of what President Trump and Vice President JD Vance are doing with Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. They're restoring sort of the dignity and the greatness and the honor of our military. And I think that is every bit as important. I know Memorial Day is all about honoring those who have fallen, but I also think it's a great moment to think of everybody who serves. What an incredible sacrifice. And not just for the people who serve, but for everybody in their circle, their families. You know, the way families of military have to live, like constantly moving, constantly being uprooted. And I just think they deserve so much of our love and support and respect. So I'm so grateful for the way the vice president and the president handled this with such beauty and honor yesterday.
It was meaningful, and you could tell that it wasn't put on. This was something that meant a lot. You always know that about President Trump for sure. I know we're just seeing JD Vance now kind of on the national stage, but President Trump has always talked about Gold Star families. He's always talked about those people who are courageous warriors, whether they're able to return home to their families or not. And here he is on Memorial Day talking about those Gold Star families.
We share in the sorrow of their beloved families, and as one nation, we give thanks for the ultimate gift they have so selflessly given to all of us. These warriors, and that's what they are, as great, great warriors, picked up their mantle of duty and service, knowing that to live for others meant always that they might die for others. They knew that. They asked nothing for it. They gave everything, and we owe them everything and much, much more.
And Katie, I think there's no mistake that because of President Trump's strength, because of his strong courage, because people know he doesn't want to get into endless, ridiculous wars, that's why we're seeing the recruitment numbers going up. You mentioned Pete Hegseth earlier. He's doing a fabulous job at the Defense Department, but you don't need us to tell you that. All you have to do is look at the enrollment numbers, not only for our armed services, but also law enforcement. There's almost this return to law and order that's happening in most parts across the country. We're still seeing a decline in California, obviously, because of our local leadership. But there is definitely a respect going back to those people who will serve us. And I'm so glad to see it. And it's because of that leadership from President Trump and his team.
Yeah, so this would be a great time to actually talk about what's happening at the FBI. Yet
Yeah.
another institution that was just utterly decimated in the last 4 years under the Biden administration. It was so corrupted. It was so politicized. I mean, truly, I think we've barely heard, what has yet to come out. I think there's going to be a lot more forthcoming. So I think it's been really interesting. Have you been following Bongino's tweets?
Yes.
I love the way he's communicating with us, because I was frustrated. You and I have talked about this. We've been frustrated by how quick even Trump supporters have been to criticize Pam Bondi, Dan Bongino, Kash Patel for not doing enough and not doing quickly enough. But anybody who's worked in law enforcement or worked with the law understands it takes time to build a case. It is not a quick process. So,
And you have to get it right. Otherwise, why bother doing it? If you
exactly.
don't get it right, you shouldn't do it at all.
And you only get one shot at it. That's the other thing that's really interesting, right? If you blow it, it's blown. So Bongino has come out and made clear through Twitter that he and Kash Patel decided together to take a strategy of only one of them at a time doing media, so that they're not wasting their time and resources, doing media all the time, and that they would communicate with us, the voters, through Twitter. So if you're not following Dan Bongino and you care about this stuff, you need to follow him, because he's really communicating that way. And it's been very, very interesting. So here's what he just came out with yesterday. So he said that the FBI has decided or had decided that they are going to revisit a number of cases of potential public corruption, which I think is so interesting, because that means if it's potential public corruption, that means it's going to have something to do with public figures, political figures, or official government agencies. These are cases that did not go anywhere under the Biden administration. And he named in particular 3 cases. So the DC pipe bomb, the mysterious pipe
At
bomb
the
incident.
yeah, at the DNC, that's right.
All
Yep.
right.
They
On
said that
January
was on January
on
6th.
January 6th, right? So
Mhm.
that's tied to the whole January 6th scandal. The cocaine that was found at the White House,
Mysterious. Who did it belong to?
mysterious, that was never revealed. And then also the leak of the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision before it was officially released. So Bongino said that I guess they had opened these back up weeks ago, because he said he's been receiving weekly briefings, and he's asking the public for tips. If anybody has any tips, that they should let him know and let the FBI know. So it's going to be really interesting in the days and weeks ahead to see what comes out on these.
I can't wait for it. I'm glad they're picking this up. One of my pieces of frustration is about the communication, I think, with the Attorney General, with the FBI director, and now Deputy Director Bongino. In the FBI, you've got incredible communicators. Dan Bongino did it for hours every single day. Kash Patel, amazing when he gets in front of a microphone. And so what was frustrating for me is that we weren't hearing a lot from them. So I am so happy to see that Dan Bongino says, look, we're working here. We're getting to it. It started sort of, if you look at the tip of this kind of pyramid or this triangle, started with that interview that they did side by side, and they were able to communicate directly with us. But I'm loving that they're going to start using social media to get that information out. It is helpful, keeps people informed, and it knows that they're working without having to have the scope or the bias of the mainstream news media. So that's all great. So happy to hear it. As far as these cases go, I'm super curious, of course, about the cocaine. It's soapy. It makes you wonder, is it Hunter? Is it Ashley Biden? Is it someone within the Biden administration? Who did it belong to? The pipe bomb, of course, is an interesting piece of this story. There's so many lies on January 6th that have been stirred up and spit out at the American people, that this is just one of those stories that we really want to know. We want to know what happened. And I'm sure probably 10 years down the road, maybe we'll have a better timeline of what actually transpired on January 6th. But the one that's most important to me is the Dobbs leak. That could have resulted in someone dying. I mean, literally, that type of emotional information that was leaked out, you could have, knowing the threats that those Supreme Court justices are under. To me, that's the most important one. We need to protect our justices. We need to protect the way that these rulings come out. And I think I mean, that's most important for me, is trying to figure out how that all happened, and where we went wrong, and was it linked to a justice? Because I believe, Katie, that it was. And then we've got a real problem if that's the situation. It could have caused major issues, and we are probably very lucky and blessed that it wasn't worse than it was.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I go to church with a couple of the different justices, and so I'm constantly seeing them surrounded by their Secret Service detail. There were multiple threats against them at their homes here in Virginia over the last couple of years, and people don't realize what it's like to have to live with that, that threat to your safety, your life, your family's life every single day. And I just think it's shameful, and I think people do need to be held accountable. So I'm glad that you really focused on that one. I think I was focused more on the DC pipe bomb, because I want to see, I am desperate to see the truth about January 6th. I just there's just no way that was spontaneous, that whole thing that happened. There's so much dodgy evidence about what happened on that day, and I'm thinking, maybe if we can get to the bottom of what happened with the pipe bomb, it'll sort of crack open the bigger case. But I also have to believe, and I don't know if they've said anything about this or not, I have to believe they're investigating January 6th as well.
I would have to. I would imagine so, and I think probably all of the atrocities the crimes committed against the defendants. I mean, so many of them did not get their opportunity to get a speedy trial. Many of them sat in jail for months before they were even charged. I mean, there were so many violations that I think would be ripe for an investigation, large scale investigation from the DOJ. And I would imagine that's on their priority list. But there are so many things. There were
I
so
know.
many cover-ups under that last administration. So on the most,
And at the same time, Cash and Bongino are having to clean out the corruption,
yeah,
kind of rebuild the FBI, and on top of that, they're talking about moving it out of the headquarters in DC. So it's
which I
like,
would love to see. Yeah.
man, those guys have a lot on their plate.
And in fact, I think it was that interview where the two of them were together and Cash said, "Yeah, we're moving out of out of Virginia." I think Bongino was like, "Wow, are you ready to go there? Are you ready?" So, I mean, obviously they're working on a lot behind the scenes. So,
Yeah.
we'll keep you posted on that. On the most salacious, probably most TMZ like headline, that cocaine at the White House. Who was it? Who did it belong to, Katie?
Uh, I think it was, who's the granddaughter? Is it Ashley?
Ashley's the daughter. That's Jill and Joe's daughter. The granddaughter of Hunter is, oh gosh. So you think it's one of Hunter's kids, essentially, right?
I don't know. I kept hearing rumors, but honestly, I don't know. I hate to speculate. It's hard because, I always go back to that sort of Christian adage, don't trap, what is it? Don't trap someone in their sin by gossiping about them, right? So I hate to say
I never
anything.
gossip. Oh, check out my coffee mug, by the way, today. Look at this. It's a vintage America First coffee mug.
Oh my gosh.
It's a fight mug. You can
I
check that.
love it. Good for
I don't
you.
know if that Seb Gorka store is still up there, but go to it. Go check it out.
Oh, that's
All
funny.
right. So I will link the cocaine story with another story we want to talk about today, and that is the story of the French Macron. Uh, just a couple weeks ago, and we ignored this story. I did it on purpose because I'm like you. I don't know what I saw, but I thought I saw something. But I thought, what is there to talk about if we don't know? But there was a very viral image that circulated on social media of who was it? It was Starmer. It was the German prime minister. It was President Macron, right? Is that right? Are they a prime minister in Germany? No, it's president. Anyway, three of them on a train. And it looks like on this video that Emmanuel Macron got caught with a little tiny baggie of a white substance in front of him. And now I'm not a drug person. I've never done drugs in my life, but there was a little spoon next to the German prime minister who's sitting there, got a little spoon. Macron's got the little baggie. And as soon as the camera enters the frame, the spoon and the little baggie get pushed into pockets, and a very guilty look pops up on Macron's face. And so there were a lot of folks who said, "Hey, Emmanuel Macron just got caught with cocaine." Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I saw the video. It looks pretty suspect. Did you get a chance to see it?
Yeah, I completely agree with you.
It looked like your kid, like you're a mom, you walk in on your 12-year-old holding on to something he's not supposed to have. That's exactly what Macron looked like. And the reason that's related to a story today is that if you were watching Memorial Day weekend's news coverage, there is another video of Emmanuel Macron who's landed. His plane has landed in Hanoi in Vietnam. And the door opens. There's like one of his security guys that stands by the plane door. And all of a sudden, you see Macron kind of come into the frame, and two red sleeves belonging to a woman hit him in the face almost. I mean, one is holding his face, the other is pushing his face away. And it did not look like something that was funny. I've never done that to someone. I mean, I've never hit someone in the face either. I know I'm super boring here, no drugs and no fights. I got to find something fun to do with my time. But this looked like a legitimate push. This wasn't like yucking around, hitting somebody on the shoulders or slapping somebody on the back. And at first, people were saying that this was fake news, that this was not. Here comes Macron, by the way, who gets caught by the cameras, and he smiles again. And then his wife with the red sleeves come out, Brigitte. And so you're like, okay, his wife is beating him up. This is interesting. But at first, the rumor was that that was a fake video, that it was AI. Well, no.
Yeah.
It was not. And Macron came out and actually acknowledged that that was true. It was a real video, but he said that they were just having fun. They were just messing around, and that she hit him in jest. Now, I don't think it's funny to hit someone in the face, Katie. Please tell me you agree with me. It
I
seems
100% agree with you, and I think that the look on his face of just like total being stunned
yeah,
when the camera caught him, that was not a playful look.
it was not. So what's going on there? Remember, their relationship is already weird. She was the drama teacher, and I think she was 39 and he was 17 or 16, I think. And
I think
his
it's an 18-year age difference.
his stepson is actually 2 years older than he is, which is an
Wow.
interesting one. But look, I'm not here to age shame because you know what? Relationships happen all the time. I don't care. Date younger, date older, and good for her. Typically, we don't see that it's the older woman and the younger man, and I applaud that. But I do think it's a little odd that they had that happen on video and that they tried to play it off. I mean, I don't know what else you do when you get caught on video, but it seems like there's trouble brewing.
Yeah,
There it is.
we'll
I don't
see.
know.
I know.
And it plays out on the stage. Imagine what our media would do if Melania was caught hitting President Trump.
Ugh. Oh my gosh. You
Can
know
you
what?
imagine?
I
Oh,
just I just hate the way they all try to make us feel like we're insane for coming to the conclusions that we do, whether
I
it's the
know.
cocaine on the train or Macron getting beaten by his wife. I mean, we see what we see. Don't go telling us it's manipulated or it's, AI. No.
That was really good
We've
for
had it with
Blinken.
those days.
I know. Remember, they told us that Biden really wasn't senile. It was AI. It
Yeah.
was deep fake. All
And
right, a
and now
couple of
they've also just discovered that he has cancer. That's another
yeah,
one.
but we gotta talk about that too, maybe another episode on that. Ugh, anyway, couple of other stories today, one of them involving RFK, who's been doing a great job as the Health and Human Services Secretary. He is actually going after Big Ag, and I think this is so important for such a long time. Big Ag, Big Pharma, look it up, they are owned by the same people, and so you have to realize that a lot of the stuff that gets sprayed on our food, a lot of the stuff that is put into our food supply makes us sick so that big pharma can treat us. This has kind of been one of the tenets of the Make America Healthy Again movement. And RFK has gone after big ag now, Katie. And I think this is appropriate. Look, a lot of politicians like to take their money, but you got to make sure that they are also delivering safe, healthy, quality products to us.
100%. So, first, the big news today coming out from Robert Kennedy Jr. and the Center for Disease Control, they just announced a couple of hours ago that they are taking the COVID vaccine off the list, off the schedule of required vaccines for healthy children. So this is a huge step. One of the things that they've come out and said in the last couple of weeks is that vaccine, not only is it actually what we've all suspected and what we were all saying, and now they are finally confirming that, yes, it is causing a high incidence of myocarditis, especially amongst young men. We all know the stories of people, these men, boys that like drop dead in the middle of nothing, right? For no
Yep.
reason. So there's that story. But the other thing is what they've acknowledged is that the COVID vaccine was brought to market before all the necessary testing could be done. And so what they're saying now is, A, we don't think it's needed, but B, we don't want people taking it without all the testing done to ensure that it actually really is safe for children and pregnant women. But yes, then there's this other story, and I find this really fascinating. So he came out with his big MAHA report last week. Super, super important, and everybody should read it. I think it's really interesting. He's brought out new nutritional guidelines, which is great. But one of the pieces that has come out in the aftermath of that report is some great reporting at the Blaze, where they did a deep dive into all the criticism of the MAHA report. So, there's been a bunch of people that have come out and said, oh, no, this is, the negatives are, this is baseless, this is misinformation. Because one of the things that the MAHA report says, so first of all, the numbers in terms of children's health, even Americans' health, were stunning to me in terms of like the incidence of cancer, of all kinds of problems, health issues. It's really scary, actually. The report is quite terrifying. But one of the things that they conclude in the report is they suggest that exposure to agricultural chemicals like pesticides and insecticides might be one of the many root causes contributing to this health epidemic and the chronic diseases affecting children. And it's particularly refers to, quote, crop protection tools.
Mhm.
And so, bottom line is pesticides may be harmful. Okay, now tell us something we don't know, right? Again, it's something that we've all suspected. Most of us will not use Roundup, right? Um, so what, lo and behold, of course, you have various agricultural groups have come out saying the MAHA report is baseless and this is misinformation and this stuff isn't true. But the Blaze did this great reporting to dig into, who is making these criticisms? Who's calling the report baseless? And of course, it turns out to be people getting funding from Monsanto
Right.
and some of the other big producers, Bayer Global. And I just, this is, look, I don't think you can put a stop to this, right? We have free speech. This is what happens. But I love the fact that it's getting exposed.
Yeah, me too. And just truth, transparency, and information. And give us the information. Let us make our decisions. We just don't need a heavy handed government, whether that's with vaccines. You want to get the COVID vaccine, get it all day long. But at least reveal that there is a risk of myocarditis, particularly in young men. If you want to lick Roundup off of your nearest tomato bush, by all means. But at least you know that there could be a risk. Just give us the information, give it to us unbiased, and let us make up our mind. And that's why I'm so glad RFK is there. If he can work with President Trump's McDonald's habit, we can all work together.
Well, and I just want to say one last thing about this, because I think one of the things that really got under a lot of people's skin over the last few years was that the whole mantra under Fauci, trust the science, like
Yeah.
the science is God. And what we're starting to see is that the science was profoundly politicized. This is
Yes.
another case of the science being politicized. We saw multiple cases of major figures in universities, including the president of Stanford University, of all places,
Mhm.
getting caught in producing falsified test outcomes,
Yeah.
right? And so I just think, okay, trust but verify. So,
You
I
always need
think
to look at who pays for the survey, right? Who pays
exactly
for the study. Just follow it through and educate yourself. It's the only way to go. All right.
100%.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to get Katie's book. It's called Next Gen Marxism, available right now wherever you get your books. You can also check her out online at katiegorka.org. You can follow her on Facebook. Just search for Catherine Gorka, on X at Gorka Katie. And you can follow me on social media too, Jennifer Horn Radio on Facebook and Instagram, and at Jennifer Horn on X and on Truth. Don't forget those 5-star reviews, sharing Happy Women with your friends. We always appreciate that. And you can connect with us on all of our platforms at SalemPodcastNetwork.com/Happy Women. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Happy Women Podcast.